this is Deepankar. I'm here to talk about LangChain-serve, how to take your LangChain apps to production. Unfortunately, I couldn't be online during the call, hence I had to send across a recording. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the MLOps Slack workspace. I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. I'll try to rush through the slides as much as possible since I only have 10 minutes. A brief introduction about myself. My name is Deepankar. I work as an engineering manager at Jina AI and I'm based in Bangalore in India. At Jina, among other things, we develop frameworks for multimodal AI applications in open source. I've shared my socials here. Feel free to reach out in case you want to collaborate. All right, so what is a LangChain-serve? The goal behind LangChain-serve is to take users' local LangChain-based apps to the cloud without sacrificing the ease of development that LangChain already provides. So LangChain-serve basically uses Jina to achieve this. So to the members in the audience who are not aware of what Jina is, it is an MLOps framework to build, deploy, and manage multimodal applications. LangChain-serve is available on PyPy. You can install it using pip install LangChain-serve. All right, so in this quick talk, let's try to understand how to use LangChain-serve using a couple of simple examples. The first example here is deploying a custom agent in just 4 simple steps. Yeah. Let's take an old example from the LangChain talks. This example uses the search tool using the search API wrapper, then uses this tool to define an LLM chain, which is basically used to create the zero-shot agent, and finally we run agent execute.run on a particular question. This can be run on your local to get the chain of thought and the output. All right, so let's see what changes are required in case you want to deploy this using the LangChain-serve. So the first step here is to define or refactor your code into and define a function. So in this case, we define a function called ask, then add type hints to this function. So here we've added the input of type string and the return type of string. Then we add the return value. So we just basically do agent execute.run on that input and finally return that. At last, we basically import the serving decorator from LC-serve. This is a decorator that the LangChain-serve Python module provides. So you add that, import that and add that to the ask function that we just defined. So this is just to show that we can also run the ask function as is like before on your local. All right, let's go to the step 2. So the step 2 here is to add requirements.txt that includes all your requirements for that function. So in this case, OpenAI and Google search results are enough. So whatever your dependencies are, you just add them to a requirements.txt in the same directory and just save it there. Okay, now that the code refactoring and requirements.txt are done, let's run this, let's deploy this app locally. So the command to do that would be lc-serve deploy local and your application name. So in this case, app.py was a file name. So we just basically passed the module name called app. So that's what running this will expose REST API on your local on the port 8080. Now you can talk to it using the curl command. So here notice that we're basically sending a curl request to localhost port 8080. And the function name that we had added called ask has been added as an endpoint on that API. So you can send a call request here. If you observe the data, the input schema in this case, the input, the field input was one of the arguments under the ask function. And this schema also accepts all the environment variables. All these environment variables are basically needed so that the function can run. So in this case, these are the tokens provided by OpenAI and Serve API. All right. So once we know that okay, the function is the function is exposed as a REST API on your local, and actually we can interact with it. Now let's go to the next step and deploy it on Jina AI Cloud. So the command here, the only change here is from local we've shifted to JCloud, which is basically Jina AI Cloud. So we basically run LC-serve deploy JCloud app, and that would give us an endpoint. This endpoint is a serverless REST API endpoint with TLS certs on Jina AI Cloud. Using this endpoint, you can basically send this same call request to validate that all your requests are passing successfully. You also get Swagger docs using this, and also the OpenAPI specs, which can be used as another agents if you want. Let's go to a slightly more complex example. So in this example, we'll try to enable human in the loop on a server which is deployed on Jina AI Cloud. This is enabled using WebSocket streaming. So let's go through this. So first thing, like before, we decorate our function. So we define a function called HITL. This accepts an input called question, and the output type hint is again of type string. We add the return values, which is basically again the agent chain.run. The change here, the difference here is basically to define a streaming handler. That streaming handler is responsible to send the WebSocket responses back to the user. So you get the streaming handler, and I'll add them as a callback manager to whatever LLM function you've defined. Just passing this would be enough to send all the LLM output via this callback manager back to the user. Via this, we also enable human in the loop. So whenever there is an input required, we basically intercept the LC-serve will basically intercept them and send a response to the user and wait for user's input to come back so that it can proceed with the next steps. Yeah. Finally, we basically add import and add the serving decorator. Remember to pass WebSocket is true in this case. All right, so let's skip the local deployment and go to Jina AI Cloud directly. So we basically do the same again. LC-serve deploy JCloud, and we pass HITL, which was our file name. And doing this will give you a WebSocket endpoint, and you notice that this is what WSS, which is basically a WebSocket endpoint. In this case, rather than demoing using curl, so I have written a very simple Python client. So first it connects to the endpoint and sends a JSON which has the question and the envs like before. Then it waits for a stream of responses back from the server. And prints them to the user's console. It intercepts there's a particular format that it intercepts, which is expected whenever user input is desired. That format is defined here, and whenever that is there, we basically ask for an input to the user, and whatever input we've got, we just send it back to the server. And this is how the human in the loop is interpreted in LC-serve. Yeah, so that was a very simple example of enabling streaming and human in the loop. But again, this can be expanded to any complicated cases. All right, so what's coming next? So we want to enable hosting Streamlit tabs on Jina AI Cloud for these LangChain apps, so that user will also get an UI for an application. Then the complete journey would be available for any user. We also want to add authorization for the API endpoints, which will validate the request from valid users rather than allowing anyone access. And we want to add more examples to our docs. All right, so that's the time I had. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this useful, please let us know. If you have any feedback, any feature requests, join us on Slack or create any GitHub issues. Yeah, thank you.